Hey guys, Stealth here and welcome back to Stormworks. In this tutorial we're going to have a look at the advanced door. Now in case you don't know exactly what I'm looking for, you got the standard doors. These are the ones that just slide open and closed. You got the dock doors. I'm still not exactly sure why they call them dock, but sure. And then you have the manual doors, or the door frames as people call them. Now today we're going to be building one of these doors. This is pretty much a requested tutorial, because people don't quite know how to use these doors or how to make them work. Alright, so here's the situation. You got two parts that you need to build the door frame. You got the door frame corner and you got the door frame edge. Important is that the robotic door hinge is also part of both your door frame and your door itself. The game treats the door as a separate entity from the ship. So what I'm going to start out with is just to build a sort of frame about where I want my door to be. Let's make it a small platform here. And you can just imagine as this being your ship. Now I'm going to go up 7 tiles. And you can see that here, bottom right hand side, 1.75. This way, I know that this is tall enough for my character to walk by. Then this would be the, let's say the top of the deck. And this is where I want my door to get in. This is where I want to place it. Now, in order to do that, you're going to have to remove some blocks. Because these things, the door frame corners, you don't want those to be sticking out of the deck. Then you're going to have to jump over them. So we're going to remove a couple of these blocks. And then you're going to put the door in. Important over here with the door frame is that you see these blue lines. This is where the other blue lines from the door itself are supposed to line up. So, we're going to put this thing in, like that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. If I were to do it like this, you can see that there is no exact line between this one and that one. And this means that the door cannot be sealed. You're going to have an open water space. And in case you're building a ship, that is not really going to be doing too much for your surfaceability, for your buoyancy. Alright, same up here. And next, I'm going to throw in the robotic door hinge. Because this thing is going to be the one that actually turns the door, that actually opens it. Also very important when you're building this door, is to figure out, hey, which way do I want the door to turn? Because it can really only turn one way. You see these things over here, these little ridges? It's hard to point at them when I have a block. This is what the door is going to fall into. So the door from over here is going to swing out that way. If I'm standing over here, it's going to come towards me. That is something that you really need to know right before you start building this door. Otherwise, you might find that your door is going to either not open because it doesn't have the room, or it's going to slam you in the face when you don't really expect it. Alright, now that I have my corners set up, I then add the rest of the door pieces. And these, for now, are just the door frame edges. Next, remove these blocks, and I can just draw a line right up. We still have one down here. And there's still one down here. There, that's my door frame. Now inside the door frame, you're going to build the door. And the game has already started that, because I built this robotic door hinge. So what I need to do now is use both the door panel and the door panel corner in order to build the actual door. I'm going to start with a couple of door panel sections. And again, make sure that these things line up. You want these little arrows to be looking at the other bigger arrows over there. I'm going to add another one down here. Then I'm going to make a small line. These are just standard blocks. No, I don't need a hinge, just need one of these. And you can then draw, or just pick the whole thing up and draw a line down, just as if you were placing down the normal blocks. Okay, we still need to do a couple like these. One down here. And one up here. And then you have a door panel corner, which, as the title of the block indicates, goes in every corner. Eventually I'll figure out these rotations, but I think that, or rather hope that you might be struggling with those as much as I do. Because whatever I do, the block never seems to line up with the way that I want it to. There we are. Alright. And that is your basic door. Now this is only part of the component because you still need to open it. And if you go to the logic section, it's going to show you that this is not a simple push button. You don't actually open this thing with a door or with a standard push button like you would with another door. Because if I were to place down a push button, the game says, nope, sorry, you can't do that. This thing outputs an on or off signal, and this thing requests a number. This thing is asking what the rotation or what the orientation of the door should be. So we're going to have to build something that fixes that for you. And that is a microcontroller. I'm going to make a new microcontroller. I only want 2 points on that thing. I want 1 input and 1 output. Let's start off with the name. This is going to be the, let's say, the custom door opener. I need 2 points. One node is going to be my push button. So I can call this the push button. And the other node is going to be the rotation target. That's a really fancy word of saying what way do you want the door to turn. That's all that is. This, however, is not an input. This is an output. I can make this small. And then you're going to go into logic. Now over here you got these 2 blocks. These are the ones that you just made. This is the input. This is the output. In order to turn an input on-off signal into a number output, you're going to have to use a numerical switch box. A numerical switch box is, or it can look a little intimidating, but there are only a couple of components on this thing. Starting off on the left, you got this on-off signal. Sorry, this is the numerical junction. I'm picking the wrong one. It should be the numerical switch box. Here we go. You got 3 on the left, 1 on the right. This thing signals whether the numerical switch box is on or off. Does it receive an on signal or does it not receive an on signal? So connect the red to the red. Then you got these 2. Numerical switch box first value and second value. First value, as indicated, is what should the number be when the input is on. So if the numerical switch box gets a push button signal, so you push your button, then it should send a particular number towards the rotation. Sorry, I called this rotation word. Rotation value. Now, for an on signal, I want that to be 1. So I'm going to take a constant number, and you place down 2 of those. 1, 2. Both connect up. At the moment, both of these say 0. So if I were to use this thing right now, it wouldn't actually do anything. Because regardless of whether I push the button or not, the rotation target is going to be 0. So the door doesn't actually rotate. So what I want this value to be is 1. So that the door actually opens. That is all that you need to do. Rotation target for on should be 1. Rotation target for off should be 0. And the door snaps closed again. So let's save that. Custom door controller. You can close the editor. And then you go and look in your component inventory for custom. Because that is the one that I called it. Custom door opener. And you can place this thing down pretty much anywhere you want. It doesn't even have to be near the door. It can be anywhere. If you have a particular room on your ship where you place down all of your controllers or all of your logic, that would make a fine position for that. Now there is one more thing that I need to do, and that's to add a battery. Because at the moment, I'm in advanced mode. And even if you weren't in advanced mode, you'd still need one of these. Then we have this push button. And I actually don't want this push button on here. I want this push button on the door. So I'm going to make this a push button. And then we're going to go back into logic. The on-off signal goes to the push button custom door opener microcontroller. This one, the rotation value, goes to the rotation target. Then you connect up your electricity. So the battery feeds the door and the push button. And now you can spawn it in. There's the door, it almost tipped over right there. Now I can push the button and the door opens. If I release it, the door immediately snaps closed again. Because only when the microcontroller here receives this on signal, so I am pushing the button, that's when it opens. As soon as I let go, it just snaps closed again. Which is kind of handy, but there is a situation in which it might be actually more useful to keep the door open for a couple of seconds. Because you might, for example, have a couple of passengers who you want to get on your ship. And if they are AI passengers, well, good luck. On top of that, there is another issue. I can open the door. I can, well, mostly go through the door. If you're fast enough, that is. And currently, I'm already struggling with that. And if I were on this side, I can't open this door. So I need to fix that. So back into the workbench. We're going to make this microcontroller a little bit more complex. Let's say that you only have your standard push buttons available. Let me indicate what I mean. You got the standard push buttons. These are the push buttons that I just installed. So there's just this one over here. You might have push button two-sided unlocked. That would be perfect, because then you could have the push button come in from over here, or you could push it from over there. That's great. I really like that. But if you're playing career, you might not have that yet. So first off, I'm going to have one push button on this side of the door, and I'm going to have a push button on this side of the door. Now we run into a bit of a problem, because I can hook them up to power, but I cannot hook both up to this microcontroller. And the problem is that I could have either this side or the other side, but not both. So I'm going to make this microcontroller a little bit more complex. I'll do that first, and then I'm going to get around to opening the door and keeping it open for a couple of seconds. We're going to make this section over here a little different. You're going to add an XOR. An XOR means that it can receive signals from two different points. This push button is no longer the only push button that we have, because now we have two. So what I need to do is go back to the design and add another push button. So this is going to be push button 2, or you can just call it push button overall. It doesn't really matter, it's your choice. The game now says, oh, sorry, I can't fit that. So we're going to have to make it a little larger. I like having my inputs and my outputs close together. So I'm going to make it like this. Increase the width, go to logic, and there's our next push button. Now, this push button goes to A input. This push button goes to the B input. And the output goes to the numerical switch box. You can see that the numerical switch box, because it is only one of those signals that can receive an on or an off, cannot receive it from both push buttons at the same time. And now it goes through the XOR. You can update it. Be sure to save it first, because you might need to change this thing on other ships as well. Then you update. The game says, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Now, you will need to manually reconnect the rotation target as well. Then you got the one push button, and you got the other push button. Push button 1 now works. But what if I'm on the other side? Now I can get out. Ideally, you would just use one push button. It just makes your life so much easier. But especially early on in the campaign, you're probably going to be investing in stuff like engines and door controllers, let alone the custom doors, but you might not have those two-sided doors. Okay, so now you can open it from both sides. Great. I'm going to set up a small ramp here so I can actually walk through this thing. Next up, we want to make sure that the door stays open for a second. And maybe a bit more than 1 second. So what's going to happen is that I push either of these buttons, the door opens, stays open for a couple of seconds, and then it closes all by itself. Now why would you want why would you want this? Well, you might be underway. You got a couple of passengers that you load up, and you really want to make sure that you got no water coming into your ship. So we're going to make sure that the door closes automatically and that your ship stays watertight. I'm going to move the two push buttons and the XOR a little off to the side. And then we're going to add something. And that's a capacitor. A capacitor it's a bit of a cryptic description. It says charges up when receiving on-signal and then discharges over a period of time. Okay, so what does that mean? What that means is that your on-signal either takes a little bit more time to receive or takes a little bit more time to turn off. The one is charge. So how long does the game need to wait until it sends the on signal towards the numerical switch box? And you gotta make sure that you connect this. This sits between your XOR and your numerical switch box. Or, if you're not using this, your push button, your capacitor, and then the switch box. If I were to do it like this is what would happen. I was pushing the button, and the capacitor said, yeah, okay, I'm registering that, but I'm going to wait 1 second for me to open that door. And then it also waits 1 more second before it closes the door. That's the discharge portion of it. Okay, so we're on our way, but I don't want to be waiting before this door actually opens. So I'm going to turn my charge time to 0. If I do it like this is what happens. You walk up to your door, you push the button, it immediately opens. Now I have 1 whole second to go through it, and then it closes. Again, 1 whole second might be enough for you, but it might not be enough for your passengers. So what you can now do is make the microcontroller a little different and turn the discharge all the way up to 10 seconds at the maximum, 5 seconds halfway, or just 0 when it immediately discharges. If it immediately discharges though, you might as well not have it. I usually stick to 4 to 5 seconds so that my passengers or rescuers or scientists or whatever have enough time to go through the door. So here's what happens. I push the signal, or I push the button, door opens, I walk through, I wait a couple of seconds, and the door snaps shut. That is what you can do with the capacitor. Now there are a few other things that you can do with this door. Because if you have the custom door components, then you're also going to find the door frame controller. The door frame controller for sealing door frames. Placing the controller as part of a door frame will let you lock the door when closed and check whether the door is close enough to be forming a seal. Now, again, the description is a little cryptic, but basically this allows you to lock the door and to check if the door is actually sealed, so if there's no water coming through. I'm going to add one of these to the door. For that, I'm going to make some room over here on this side. There we go. Now, you don't actually see anything on this. It doesn't look like anything has changed. But if you go to logic, something has changed. You got this over here, seal lock. Controls if the door panel will lock in place when sealed. And the other one, the seal state. Indicates if the door panel is closed and is forming a seal. I want to use this one first. I want to make sure that I can see whether this thing is active. So is the door in fact sealed? For that I'm going to use an indicator light. And I'm going to paint that indicator light green. So I'm going to go to additive, green, excuse me if it's not green but I'm colorblind. And now I want this light to come on when it actually is sealed. The only thing you need to do for that is use the seal state and connect that to the indicator light. Don't forget to hook up your light to the battery or other power sources or it won't turn on. Our indicator light's on. The door is in fact sealed. If I push the button though, the indicator light goes off and the system goes, oh shit, your door's not secure. Then close it again, light comes on. You could have this on the door. But you could also have this in your cockpit, control center, bridge, whatever you want to call it. And this way you can make an indicator panel showing you which doors are open and which doors are not. And that allows you to then quickly get an overview of the ship and see if anybody left a door open. That is what makes those door controllers, the thing that I just added over there, very, very handy. The next one is, can we seal it? That is this one. Controls if the door panel will lock in place when sealed. Let's just say that you don't want this door to open no matter what happens. For that, actually, I don't need a push, I need a toggle button. This is basically like lock on your front door. Does the door allow to open, yes or no? But only if it is sealed. So this thing needs to be green first, and then I can use the seal lock. Now this thing I'm going to put over there. So if I toggle it, send the signal to the seal lock, and of course hook it up to power. Spawn it in. I can now open the door. I'm going to wait till we close it. There's 5 seconds, door closes, lock. I can push this button all I like right now, and the microcontroller is trying to open it, but the door is really reluctant to open. Now this is more of a bug than anything else, because that was not supposed to happen. We can fix that. That is, if I can actually get my door back to the workbench. What happened is that the door controller, or sorry, the door hinge over here, this thing was trying to throw a lot of maximum power onto the lock. And it couldn't quite get rid of all that energy, so it decided to flip the whole creation. I'm going to put this all the way over to 2%, because you don't need much more than 2% of power to open a door. Because now the door still opens. But I would rather that the thing doesn't flip out again when I secure it. So lock it. And now it simply won't open. And the whole creation does not spin out of control. Which is nice if you're a ship out in the middle of the open. Now why would you want this? A couple of reasons. So that, for example, you don't accidentally open a door that's underwater. And you could have this also indicated by a water sensor. So let's say that this is the inside of your ship. I'm going to make this thing a little larger to simulate what I mean. Yeah, I'm going to keep those things in place, so it's not going to be the neatest door, but that's all right. All right, so this is the exterior of your ship. This is the interior of your ship. Let's say that this is supposed to be a watertight compartment. And you can just imagine that everything else is watertight. If you have a water sensor, or rather a fluid sensor, also known as a, where is it, fluid meter, you can now add this to the door controller. So we're going to add a fluid meter in the deck. And if there is water in this compartment, I absolutely do not want to open this door, because that could kill off the rest of the ship by flooding it. You can use that in the microcontroller as well. It's just going to be quite a bit larger. We're not going to touch any of this. It is not relevant. We are going to add, however, a couple of other logic points. One is going to be, let's move that along. Or actually, I'm going to move that over here. This is going to be lock the door. So this is going to be the output. The other signal that I want is a water indicator. So if there is more than 1 point of water inside that segment of the ship, don't open that door. So this is going to be the fluid meter. Now the system says, hey, this is not quite fitting. Again, I want to stick this thing in one large line, but you can make it any way you like. You can say, hey, I want it like this, because then I have it fitting better into my ship. Up to you. We got the fluid meter and the lock the door signal. I'm going to leave everything here intact. This whole system works and you don't touch it. The fluid meter, however, I want to have as a more than, so a greater. A greater than checks if A is bigger than B. And then says, yep, it is, or nope, it isn't. That's basically all that that thing does. So what I want is for the greater than to signal whether the door should be locked or not. Then we have the fluid meter. This thing says, is A greater than B? If so, lock. So A, the fluid meter, the amount of fluid on the other side of the door, should not be greater than a constant number. Should not be greater than 0. If there is more than 0 inside that section, lock the door. Spawn it in, update it. Take note that your microcontroller has now grown. Had you had any section of, for example, a standard block over here, the microcontroller just bulldozes that out of the way. So always make sure you have enough room for your microcontroller, or you might find that all of a sudden your whole segment is no longer secure. Now, we next have the fluid capacity and the fluid level. The capacity is how much this room can hold in total, so that's not the one I want. This returns the number of fluid items or liters in an enclosed volume. So, in this case, in my watertight compartment. So, if there is water in here, this thing is going to tell me how much there is. And then we have the lock the door. And we previously did that with the toggle button. Now I'm going to use it with the seal lock. With this, I actually also want another indicator on this door, because I want to know if it's locked or not. So I'm going to remove another block. I'm going to get another indicator light. And I'm going to paint that one red to see, hey, no, you cannot actually go through this door. You can also name it. You can say, is the door locked? And this is the door sealed? Again, hook up everything to power because we added some new components. This one over here. And the microcontroller and the fluid meter don't need anything. So what happens now is that right now the indicator says yes, the door is sealed. This one says nope, the door is not locked because there is no water on the other side. Now, if you want to test whether this thing works, you could submerge the ship. It works, but, well, you don't really want to do that, generally. And it's a whole lot of hassling. So what we can do is temporarily add a throttle. Again, this is actually editing the microcontroller would be easier. If there is more water in here than 0, then I want you to lock it. So I'm going to keep this thing here. I'm just going to deconnect it. I'm going to add another constant and show you what happens if A is greater than B. So let's just say, yes, there is 500 liters of water on the other side of that door. Update it. And you already heard the door go click. The door is now locked, although the indicator doesn't quite work yet. And that's because I didn't hook it up. So it locks the door, and with the same signal also tells me whether the door is locked, yes or no. And you can now see, yes, the door is locked. And I called it door lock with a question mark, but you can also say, is there water on the other side? Or warning, water. Again, you can have these over here, but you can also have those somewhere on your bridge, your cockpit, your control room, whatever you call it. This is how doors can be used. You can add all sorts of stuff to them. You can make them open manually, you can make them close manually, you can open automatically. And that's the last part that I'm going to be using in this tutorial. I want a player sensor. If I stand in front of this door, I want this door to open for me. This is not much more difficult than what we already had on the microcontroller, because we had these two push buttons. And this thing over here, player detected, is basically the same as you pushing the button. So from this side of the door, I don't need this push button anymore. So this push button input, I'm going to replace with this player detected input. Now you got to be playing around with this thing a little bit to get it right. Currently it detects people in a hemisphere. And you can say, I only want this to detect me, players. Or I only want this to detect NPCs. I'm not exactly sure when you would want to be using that, but you can. I'm going to detect all, because if I have a passenger, I also want the door to be open. Radius is 5 meters. That is really quite far. I can use that is if I hook it up to power, because player sensors actually do not need energy. I can approach this door, and right now the door is locked, so My bad. I need to fix that situation first. This one is going to go back to here, and I'm going to remove that. That example was done. So now the door shouldn't be locked. And in fact, the door already opens when I start over here. That's fine, but it might be a little far away. Because let's just say that this door would be part of a corridor. You don't really want all the doors in the corridor to open if you just walk through the corridor. Look at the range to that thing. So I'm going to add that a little, or adjust that a little. We're going to slide this thing back to about 150. So that's 1 meter 50 or 5 feet. And now the door only opens when I'm pretty much in front of it. This way, you know that you don't have to push the button. You could call it lazy sailing, lazy building, or automated building, whatever you want to call it. I like it being efficient, because now I don't have to push the button. But I'm still getting a slight delay, because the door isn't open by the time that I get there. So what I want to do is make this thing a little more, maybe go to 250. I just want it to be opening by the time that I get there. Nope, still too long. Maybe 325, another 75 centimeters. Yep, there you go. Now I basically don't have to wait at all. I had a very brief slowdown, but this way you can just open it. Keep in mind though, the push button that we used over here, you need to keep pushing this in order for it to turn on or off. This player sensor is not as one-sided as the push button. This is me pushing the on button. So this is me sending an on signal. Me standing here is also sending an on signal. And I'm standing here the whole time, and the on signal is constantly there. If, for some reason, you have either a player or an NPC, like a passenger, standing or sitting over here, the door would not close. So be very careful where you place these things down and what their detection radius is. Because if it is too big, you're going to find that the door simply won't close. And if that's a door at or close to water level, well, that could sink the ship. Now that concludes the tutorial for the custom doors. There are definitely things that I haven't covered yet that you can do with this door. If you have any questions, let me know. If you have any particular tutorial requests, let me know. And also let me know down below in the comments what you're going to be making with these custom doors. Oh, and before I send you off, there is one more important thing. Currently I'm on version 8.20, and you can only have these things straight. You can have a straight door. You can, for example, not have a door that... how do I explain that? A door in a corner, if that makes sense. A door frame only ever opens this way. If you were to have a hatch with a hinge in it, it only opens like you were lifting it, but it doesn't fold. That's very important because that indicates whether the thing is sealed or not. Alright, with that, thank you for watching. I hope this tutorial helped you. Again, if you have questions, let me know because I'm here to help you guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up so other people can find it easier. And again, if you have any particular requests for tutorials, let me know down below in the comments.